What's up, my lovely people? Welcome back to the channel for something very exciting today, which I've kind of been wanting to do for a while now, but there hasn't really been a proper opportunity for, which is talking about the vocoder and the spectral resonator. And the inspiration for this came from a new song by Muzz, who, oh my god, I think Muzz is probably one of the most underrated producers out there. I mean, he has a very solid fan base, but the level of his production is just absolutely incredible. And, you know, I've been wanting to do a video on something by Muzz for a while now, but he's really good, so it's kind of tough to pick some really cool things to do there. There's going to be more of that in the future, but today I want to talk about something small. Something small but cool that is sort of trademark for Muzz, which is this vocoder voice that he's using. And it just sounds so gnarly, it sounds angry, it sounds epic. And today we're gonna have a look at several ways how we can do something similar. It won't be exactly the same, but it's going to be equally as cool, I think. So, recently, he put out the song called Galvanize, which, first of all, is really great. I love this song. And it has this vocoder voice. That's essentially what it is. And it sounds like this. One version sounds like this in the song at the very beginning. And then later in the song, it's slightly different, like a different processing.
I get down and galvanize.
Oh my god, I just looked on my watch, which I'm not wearing. And I'm so looking forward to just going absolutely apeshit again. So yeah, quick shout out if you plan on going to Rampage Open Air or any other Dutch or Belgian festival this summer. Hit me down up in the comments and maybe we can go and have a drink together and skank out to some sick music. With that being said, let's have a look at how we can recreate this voice. And we're going to look at two ways. One of them is using the vocoder, and the other one is using this really awesome Ableton stock plugin. I'm not sure if other DAWs have something similar, but there must be a free version out there somewhere of a spectral resonator. And so basically what I've done here really quickly is I've got this sample of me just talking into the mic right here and just saying, get down and galvanize. So that sounds like this. And it just shows you, you don't need anything special to start with. Get down and galvanize. So that sounds terrible, obviously. So version 1, it sounds like this. I'm just turning on all of the processing again.
Get down and galvanize.
Pretty cool. And we can change a lot about that still, but this is using a vocoder. The second version, which is a little bit more heavy and a little bit more robotic, it has a little bit more processing as well. We're going to also talk about that, is used with the spectral resonator, which sounds like this.
Get down and galvanize.
Which is definitely a lot different, but it's also got some cool stuff to take a look at. So let's see about version 1. What are we doing here? Well, let's turn everything off, and I'm just going to keep a limiter on the side here because that's going to help us not get anything too crazy as we're going to do some resonant filtering and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes it just hurts your ears a little bit. So only a limiter. It sounds like this again, right? Get down and galvanize. And so our first weapon of choice, this EQ is not actually necessary, is the vocoder. So the vocoder basically, it's a whole topic of its own, to be honest, which I could do a potential video on. Actually, maybe if you want to see a video specifically on the vocoder, then maybe leave a comment and tell me about it so that I know whether you guys want that or not. But it takes another synth patch, which you see here. You see this channel here called Saw, which we'll get into in a minute. And it runs the voice, or the audio sample that you have, through that synth patch, and it gets some really cool results. So what we have here on this vocoder, you have a couple of options, and you want to change this to external. It'll be on noise, but you want to change it to external. And what that means is you can select another channel here. Let's then see what do we have here. So this is actually, for now, a really simple Serum patch. It is literally just a saw wave. At 0 unison, there's really nothing going on. And so by itself, this saw wave, of course, it's playing a note, in this case F0, because I think that's the one that sounded the best. But you can change the note, which we'll get into in a minute. And it's literally like, it's not actually playing. You can see here that's turned off. We don't need it to be, but it's playing this note all throughout the length of the sample at the very least. And so that's like a low saw basically. And we're using it in this audio sample in the vocoder. And that actually already makes sounds like this.
Get down and galvanize.
So yeah, it's not that loud right now, which we're going to change, don't worry.
Get down and galvanize.
But if we turned it up a bit maybe.
Get down and galvanize.
So that already sounds really cool. And then we have to do a couple of other things. So first of all, what we can do is we can select a specific band that we want. This will be more useful later once we've applied a little bit more processing.
Get down and galvanize.
But you probably definitely want to take out these lows here. For now, let's just turn this one off.
Get down and galvanize.
All right, then the next thing that you can do, let's ignore this for a second. We don't really need this. This is something that we can do later, but we're going to run it through an amp. The amp is going to distort it. So this is actually, you'd run a guitar through this, but it's also an Ableton effect you can use on basically everything.
Get down and galvanize.
And this clean option here has a really nice way of sort of crunching up some of those mids and like maybe upper mids.
Get down and galvanize.
Really that nice coarseness that we want. Now let's make sure, okay, so we've added some essentially distortion, we've added some harmonic content to it. Let's bring all of that back up with the compressor, right? So
Get down and galvanize.
let's take some distortion. So we want to kind of see if we can add some crunch somewhere, right? So let's take a multiband distortion. And you kind of want multiband because you might not want to distort the whole thing. And let's put it on something crazy. Let's put it on extreme fold. I really like this one. So that already sounds very cool. And we can move this band around.
Get down and galvanize.
We can make the band smaller as well.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
Put it in those too much of the middle frequencies because that's where the formants are that determine the pronunciation, right? Maybe turn the drive down.
Get down and galvanize.
Cool. So another thing that we can do, so we want this sound to be a little bit degraded, right? So we can add some redux to it. Essentially, it's just going to literally take the resolution of the sound and turn it down. So we can use this bits and this rate function to add a little bit of shimmer to it, as they call.
Get down and galvanize.
So yeah, about 9 is probably nice. And then the rate.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
Just add a little bit of extra shimmer to it. All right, then let's see about adding some extra filtering. So we have this Serum effects here, and we can do lots of really cool things with it. We can basically treat it like a Serum patch. So let's do that right now. Let's turn this on, and let's see what we got here. So we can add some voicing to it to make it more stereo. This is nice.
Get down and galvanize.
So that's definitely going to make it sound a little bit more robotic because it's going to be more spread out. Whenever you have voices, like an actual voice talking or someone singing, and you add width to it, it's going to be sounding, yeah, very dispersed. You don't need to do this. I quite like it.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and
But it does sound cool. And then one thing that is definitely going to add a whole lot of both width and grit to it is to use this trick with 2 reverb filters. I really love this trick because essentially we're adding 2 copies of the sound that are going to, yeah, sort of increase different. It's going to give us different perceptions of the sound in the left and the right ear next to the central sound that we already have. And the way that we do this is by taking 2 reverb filters. One of them, yeah, at a mix of about 50% here. That's important. You don't want the whole mix. And yeah, I mean, you can play with the cutoff and see where you want to leave it, but these are the settings for now. And notice that it's panned slightly to one side. Then we're going to do the same thing with another reverb filter here, which, as you can see, is slightly panned to this side. And once again, sort of the pronunciation of the sound or the voice or whatever is going to change as you change the resonance and the cutoff. So these are the settings that I'm using, but feel free to play with whatever you want. And basically, so if you know a little bit about how Serum works, which, by the way, we talk a lot about in our flagship course, Drum and Bass Sound Design Mastery. So if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, go check that out. But basically, when you lower the mix of something to lower than 100%, what happens is the sound gets split into 2 parts. Everything before you do this processing and everything after you do this processing. And the mix button is how much those sounds are blended. So at 100%, it means that you're just getting the affected sound. At 0%, you're getting 100% of the original sound and the effect itself doesn't really work. Anything in between means you have a mix of the end result and the result before. What that means is when we add 2 filters, we're going to have the middle sound, one sound on the left, which is slightly panned here, which is only at a 50% mix, so it's not taking everything over, so it's just adding something in the left ear, and the other sound is adding something in the right ear. So we're going to create the perception of width while also affecting the sound. So it's not just going to stereo pan it, but it's going to actually create 2 slightly different versions in the left and the right ear that are going to add on top of this middle version, which is just going to make it sound super wide and super, in the case of the reverb filter, metallic and gnarly and just, oh, it's just good. It's cool. It's a very cool technique to use. Hey, quick break. If you're enjoying these videos and you like my style of teaching and you've been feeling like you want to get more into sound design, specifically for drum and bass, then maybe you want to check out my brand new online course called Drum and Bass Sound Design Mastery. It's an absolutely massive course with over 150 videos spanning 14 hours of content where we teach you two things. In the first half, we teach you everything there is to know about synthesizing sound in Serum. And in the second part, we show you how to use that knowledge to create the most popular sounds in drum and bass. I guess you can see it like the ultimate masterclass of drum and bass sound design. So if that sounds like something you could be interested in, check the link in the description below to find out more about this awesome course. All right, let's get on with the video.
Get down and galvanize.
And then, of course, we can go ahead and do some other things.
Get down and galvanize.
I always like adding the phaser as soon as I want something to sound kind of alien-ish.
Get down and galvanize.
With this rate all the way down below, it basically adds, if you use these buttons, it sort of moves back and forth a phaser filter, essentially, which just gives it a little bit more of that hollow top end, I feel.
Get down and galvanize.
So you can see also, if we change around sort of this depth, for example,
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
or this frequency button,
Get down and galvanize.
you can just kind of change how that affects the sound, right? So yeah, we can do those things in here. We could even choose to add some distortion.
Get down and galvanize.
Although I don't really think that that is mega necessary here. So that's one thing that we can do. And there's so many other things that we can add to it. You see this whole chain here of things, and really none of them really matter because they're all basically tryouts. But here is where you can start just adding random things to this sound to make it even cooler. So some of the things that I've done is I added a mid-side OTT, which basically splits up the sound into the stereo component and the mono component and takes the tops of the stereo component and makes those wider. Again, so this is going to make it sound a lot more perceived as a big sound, and especially on those higher tonalities, you want the stereo field because it makes it sound bigger and larger and a little bit more energetic.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
So it just adds a little bit of juice, sort of, like a little bit of sparkiness on the top. And then other things that I've done are try to add a convolution reverb, which can be really cool. You can download this for free, and they have this whole collection of experimental impulse responses, such as, well, I mean, I don't even know what these are, but you can try a bunch of them out.
Get down and galvanize.
I think that's pretty cool, especially when you put the decay and the size down, right?
Get down and galvanize.
You can just get a whole lot of really cool things.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
So let's like pick a crazy one, something like, let's say, strange echo.
Get down and galvanize.
That is really cool. And then, yeah, other things that we can do is we can add another Serum effects here and sort of see, should we add more reverb filters or maybe one of these crazy flanges? Because basically anything that's going to add these peaks and troughs, especially to the mid and the upper sounds, is just going to make it pretty cool. So let's turn this on, right? I added another reverb filter here with a pretty high cutoff. And again, not so much mix because we want to do things in moderation. And the same thing with a flanger filter.
Get down and galvanize.
And it all just adds to taking the sound further. And I could talk for ages about this, but basically this is the stage where you put on anything you can imagine and then essentially make it sound crazier and crazier until you've reached the level that you think is satisfactory. All right, so that is basically this version of the sound. I want to show you one more thing before we move on to the other one, which is now we've chosen as the carrier, right? This is affecting the vocal sample. The saw wave works really well because the saw wave, especially as you just heard before when I played it solo, it's very gritty. It has a lot of harmonics, and so it works really well because there's a lot in that sound to affect the vocal sample. But another point of creativity here is to change this to something cooler, something slightly more distorted. Some of these spectral wavetables work well. I've got this specific folder of free wavetables, which are called the Viridian wavetables. You can just Google them. They're for free. I'll see if I can include a link in the description. And they have some really, really crazy ones in there. Something like this, for example.
Get down and galvanize.
And so you can see here.
Get down and galvanize.
And this is also why I actually put that limiter on here, because we don't want this to be too loud. So this maybe is not the best one, but let's say that we want something crazy.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
Right? So you can change the way that the vocal sample is processed, essentially. And the spectral wavetables will work really, really well for this, you know, something like this.
Get down and galvanize. Get down and galvanize.
And you can basically just change whatever to whatever intonation you want. I really like these trilobite ones, for example.
Get down and galvanize.
Because they sound very, very robotic. And I also really like, for example, the electric guitar because it has all these peaks and troughs.
Get down and galvanize.
And it really just makes it sound mega gnarly, Right, cool. So that's things that you can do. That's version 1. That's using the vocoder. Now, we're going to look at version 2. It also has a bunch of this processing. It's almost the same as we did on version 1, just a little bit like different filters and different whatever. We're not going to look at it for too long, but instead of using the vocoder, we're going to use the spectral resonator. So one thing really quickly still about the vocoder is you have some settings on the vocoder with which you can change the way that the vocoder works. So let's have a quick look at those. We can actually change the format of it to, change the pitch with someone saying this. If you want it to sound a little bit more demonic, you can do that. You can also change the depth, which is essentially almost like a dry wet button, but just, well, you'll hear it. So it's just how much it mixes in the original sound or the vocal sample.
Get down and galvanize.
So that's another way to change this around. And then, that's pretty much all you need to know for now. So let's look at the way with the spectral resonator. So once again, we're going to ignore all the processing that we're done here. I mean, I did add like an extra overdrive here and maybe some saturation, but most of it is the same. Part 2 sounds like this.
Get down and galvanize.
Which I think is also very cool. It sounds more heavy, sounds more robotic. I'm getting Autobot and Decepticon vibes from this. And this is done using the spectral resonator. So really the only thing that's different here is that we have used this Ableton device. It's called the spectral resonator. And basically you run this through this instead of the vocoder.
Get down and galvanize.
So let's really quickly turn off everything else that's on here so we can hear what the sound is by itself from that spectral resonator, because it's already pretty cool.
Get down and galvanize.
So you can hear that this is quite similar to the vocoder, and we have a couple of frequencies here. So remember, here in the vocoder, we had to choose something to play at a certain note, and we played it here at F0, right? We have something similar in this spectral resonator here. We can choose the note, so that is going to affect how it sounds.
Get down and galvanize.
Right. So that's one thing that you can do. What it's going to do more is this shift.
Galvanize.
Which almost works like that formant part on the vocoder right here. And so then there's these different options. The granular option sounds really strange, and you don't really need that, I think. It's more color basedy, I guess. And this is also used a lot in color based sound design. The Wander, the chorus, and the normal version, they all sound
get down and galvanize.
Roughly like that. And so when you have that, right, let's turn it up 1.
Get down and galvanize.
And then you can go and add all kinds of other things. So you can add that amp back in again, right?
Get down and galvanize.
Which you see makes a lot of difference. We can put it on different settings as well.
Get down and galvanize.
And then, we can do a whole bunch of things. We can add some decapitator, which is basically just distortion.
Get down and gal.
We can add some multiband distortion if we want to. We can go and add some more redux like we did before. And then we can just go, we can do the same thing. We can add way more of this kind of processing. This is actually the exact same processing we used before. We add that on top. It sounds like this.
Get down and galvanize.
And then, as you can see here, what I've done is I've sort of added some more overdrive. I've added a couple of EQs. And also, just the crazier you want to make it, the more you start adding these filters. So all these Serum effects that you see here are basically comb filters, extra flanger filters, etc. There's a kilohertz comb filter here that might do something.
Get down and galvanize.
And all of the comb filters are going to add onto how heavy it sounds and how machine-y. Let's add that OTT back on there.
Get down and galvanize.
Add the convolution reverb.
Get down and galvanize.
Maybe a little bit less. And we can add another couple of filters. We can add some saturation. Although you want to be careful with the saturator because it tends to make things pretty crazy.
Get down and galvanize.
So just like that, this is how you create these robotic, gnarly type voices. The most straightforward way and maybe the most gritty way is to use the vocoder on a saw wave. But as you saw in this video, there are many, many, many ways to make it your own sound and make it sound as heavy or as clean as you want yourself. All right, that was the video for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something today. If you did learn something, I always say this in all my videos, but please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for more of this kind of content. And just basically, if you can comment on this video, that would be amazing for the reach. It's going to push out this content to more people like you who are looking to learn about drum bass production. All right, thank you for watching. Without further ado, we're going to end the video there, and I hope to see you in the next one.